This is an update on what's going on in the worldly spouse's family life. And it's half positive and the other half is same as usual in a way, but interesting nonetheless. So the biggest update that I have is that we finally was able to move the whole family away from our previous address to another city. So with that, it pretty much opens up a whole new chapter. I would like to say a whole new addition into my story here. Already, within the first 2-3 weeks, I've seen a huge positive improvement in my wife's attitude. Actually, we have gotten a bit closer since then. And the reason why is because her biggest source of anxiety, which was her mother, her narcissistic mother, my in-law, that particular relationship has been severed or extended by miles of physical, location. The in-laws cannot just, come over and invade our privacy or anything like that. Not that they really don't really come over to the house to see the kids or anything. We usually drop the kids off to their place. But that particular distancing is great, and it shows. A second positive thing about this particular move is that my kids are not subjected to the in-laws' JW influence anymore. And I know of a few times already, especially in the last month of us residing in our previous residence, that the mother-in-law was really ramping up the JW brainwashing with her own little narcissistic twist to it towards the kids. And of course, I can't, deny the kids from seeing them because she straddles the fine line of manipulation and, passive aggressiveness to the T, and she's a master of it. I mean, she could definitely, gaslight you into thinking, if you accuse her of any of these things that I'm mentioning, she will play the damsel in distress sort of card and try to say that, no, she's not doing that at all. What are we talking about? And my wife and I, we know what's going on. In my case, I know she's doing the JW brainwashing towards the kids, but in my wife, she thinks she's pitting my kids, against my mom and myself, I would imagine, in some degree. But all in all, that particular connection is severed by distance. My in-laws, being that they are retired, they didn't prepare for retirement, so they're practically living off of Social Security now. And that's it. They didn't save anything. They're really in the hole as far as debt, getting credit cards, charging them up. I mean, they're in dire straits as far as financially in their situation. So they can't really call my wife because it'll run up minutes on their pay per use phone that they have. They can't even have a regular phone plan or anything because their credit is just shot out of the water. So that sort of link of communication has been severed unless my wife calls them up to have that contact. Now though, they are using the Zoom app to have FaceTime with the kids, using the laptops and stuff like that. So they do have that connection there. But it would be sort of supervised because at least one of us, my wife or myself, will be in the room there to sort of monitor what's being said, and things like that. If there's anything funny or manipulative said, that could be addressed right then and there or later on when I talk to the kids afterwards. I always have some sort of debriefing with them if they go to a meeting and they talk about something, and I probe them with questions, theological questions, and questions about life and things like that, and just to get a pulse of where they're at. Because as a worldly spouse, I cannot go into direct activism with them or my wife because, as you know, they practice against us. Uh, they practice against that particular method of deprogramming or activism or things like that. So I have to sort of use the scriptures, the Bible, and biblical means of getting that connection to drive my point across. And that is what's really working for me. That's really going really well. Back in our old residence, my wife was really not motivated to go to the meetings because her mom will be there or her family. So she wasn't, and also the congregants, her so-called friends, or the other JWs are soft shunning her for the past 10 years. And mind you, this move was a cry of hope, or I don't remember the exact same, but it was a cry for help for my wife to see if we could move from that location because the friendship well of Jehovah Witnesses Association has been tainted by my in-laws pretty much. So she only has like maybe 2 or 3 really good friends that she could get along with, and the rest were just acquaintances that really don't invite her to do anything. Here in our new residence, it's a blank slate for her and myself. So being distanced away from meetings and other JW influences as far as the other members, the mom group or the female group or, social gathering, being away from that or having limited sort of exposure to that, you would think that after a while, and especially with my little input here and there, that she would research things and find things about, the organization and things like that. And she has, with my sort of, dropping of information, especially when it comes to the child abuse cases. But, and I've mentioned this in previous videos, she saw all the documentaries. We talked about it. I showed her where the policy is in the elders manual, secret manual of how they are not really protecting kids, and things like that, where even with all that evidence coming from their sources and, passages in the Bible that I drop here and there once in a while, and documentaries that show the abuses, she is still under their control. She still is willing to go to the meetings and have it, it's like an automatic thing for her where she's going back to that social structure. She doesn't trust the elders anymore because, she has run-ins with them where there really wasn't no justice when she dealt with them, because of her dad being, a hypocrite and things like that. But so she knows that the elders really have no power and they're just men and things like that. But she still is under the control of the JW theology. We're talking about 30 years of brainwashing here, or Jehovah Witness influence. It took that long for her to get deeply entrenched in that. It's going to take a long time to get her out of it, in my humble opinion. So personally, I just concentrate on the kids, like I said, because they still have their critical thinking skills. But as far as my wife, when opportunity arises, when things are happening, like, a documentary that comes out or anything, I try to have her watch it or convince her as to watch the particular documentary, or, things in the newspapers and things like that. So for the past couple of years, when I had my worldly awakening, because worldly people, if they're in the same type of relationship that I am, are just as blinded by the Jehovah Witness hypocrisy as active members are. But in any event, this is somewhat of a blank slate for myself as well. You see, I've pretty much have holding back a lot for the past couple of years. And all I've been doing really is just reading the material, reading their old publications, the old, things that really puts them into hot water, like Jesus not being their mediator and things like that, and actually reading the Bible for myself from any version other than the New World's Translation. And I actually look at the New World's Translations too to see the differences. But in any event, I held all that information back until now because I didn't want to add on to my wife's anxiety. So she's getting it from her friends, so-called friends, or lack of friends, pretty much being soft shunned. She's getting it big time from her mother. And me adding to that mixture is not going to help anything at all. If anything, it's just going to worsen it exponentially. So I held back on that and just had the opportunity to maybe drop a thing or two when the timing is just where I needed to drop that thing, like all these documentaries on TV about, the child abuse situation. And that's just something I couldn't really wait on. I have to have her sort of see that, so she could see it. And but anyway, and now, like I said, it's a new era now. It's a blank slate of my personal activism within my family. My wife is looking forward to getting back into the mix. I could already tell she made contact, or is trying to make contact with the elders to see when to go and all that good stuff. But considering with COVID-19, a coronavirus situation, everybody's on lockdown and staying away from each other, that has been putting her on a hold in a way, as we all know. As for myself, I joke with my wife saying that I'll probably get a better forward letter of introduction than you will, since you've been soft shunned in your old congregation. But I myself, not to toot my horn or anything, but I have sort of a okay reputation from the previous congregation. I'm a clean cut guy. I've got the reputation of when my wife and I meet another JW couple, or in another scenario where they really don't know us, they assume that I am a JW as well, because I don't curse in front of them. I'm nice and polite, and I don't hold any grudge against the Jehovah Witness people at all. So I treat them like I treat everyone else. I just know to look out for some buzzwords or their JW lingo more clearly now, and I can understand what they're trying to get at. So it's a lot of times I heard that it's a surprise to the other JWs when they find out that I am not a JW. It comes to a surprise to them. So that's how, sort of, I don't know what to call it, but I could pass for one of them in a way if I don't really, talk too much, I guess. So with that, I got a reputation in our old congregation of a worldly spouse that does not prohibit my wife from participating in church or the JW meetings or anything like that. A unsupportive or sort of hostile worldly spouse. I don't have that reputation at all, and I think one particular shepherding meeting, shepherding call that the elders had with my wife and I just happened to be there. They were talking about the fact that I don't get involved in like that as far as denying her worship or anything like that. And at that time, I was just, I was very, adamant about freedom of religion. And that's, to me, freedom of religion. What right do I have to do that? At the time, I still think like that, but that at the time that was my stance. So they're okay with me in a way. Actually, sometimes they come and speak with me more often than they do my wife, because I'm a pretty nice guy, or a likable guy when I'm around people. So I told her that I told my wife that she'll probably have a less favorable, letter of introduction than I will. And she didn't believe that they did that, as far as, forward a letter to the oncoming congregation about my wife's, standing in the religion, until I showed her in the elders book. That's exactly what they did. And I told her that it'll probably be tainted because your father's got, the elders in their back pocket in a way. But who knows? So at this point, I'm at a dilemma or crossroads. I've thought about this long and hard for quite a bit of time now. And I don't know if I should go hardcore into the truth about the truth type of deal and deprogramming with all the information that I know, or just go ahead and coast this and just let things happen naturally with the technique of asking questions rather than being confrontational. And that goes with, interacting with the new Jehovah Witness congregation as well, especially when we have a shepherding call. Now, the elders, they probably would not be interested in having me join the particular meeting with my wife, but I told my wife that if there is a shepherding call, I insist on being there, because I have some questions I have to ask them. And these questions would be in a situation where once I ask this, coming up, there will probably be a marking talk against us as a couple or family, or they're just gonna, hide that under the mat. I don't know which way it's gonna go. I'm hoping that they'll just glaze over. They'll tell me what I want to hear or don't want to hear, and it'll be left, alone from that situation there. Because I don't want to start off my wife's sort of, introduction to the new congregation as being marked, for having a husband that's asking too much questions. Because I really want to fight from the inside. I want to get near them. I want them to feel comfortable with me around. So, and all it is just to be near the kids. And whenever they come up with their dogma, I could, dispute their theories right then and there in front of the kids. See, this is a show just for the kids. I will not be talking to my wife about it, or I will be. Yeah, I will be asking her questions and things like that. But I would make sure that the kids are in earshot, listening to what I have to say, because they do listen. But there's going to be a question that's going to make the elders quite uncomfortable, which will determine whether we will get marked, possibly, or, they're going to tell me what I want to hear or not hear. But it's a question I have to ask from the get-go. And it's going to be a question that would somewhat entrap them into how honest they are as far as their child abuse policy. You see, in this new congregation that we're going to, there might be a possibility of one of their members being a member of the Jehovah Witnesses there, at least the wife, that the husband is a child molester. He's been caught. He's been convicted, and he's on parole. I have all the court records. I have his picture. I have the story in the local newspaper of this particular individual. And I'm just waiting to see if we show up to one of the meetings or anything, if he will be there in the audience in the back disfellowshipped, or at least a wife. And he's got a couple of kids, a couple of male adults. At least one of them, I think, is still active. I'm not sure. This is stuff that I've dug up from Facebook. The last name is I wouldn't say it's unique, but it's easily searchable. And that's how I found, that they are Jehovah Witnesses, because the perpetrator, he's an elderly man. They don't have a Facebook account or anything like that, but the sons do. When the story broke out on the newspaper, one of the sons had a Facebook account, and you could tell by the pictures that, his friends are all younger JW adults, or at least pioneer. You could just tell that they're taking pictures of them being in conventions and in front of the hall, and and the JW flair all around. So he's associated with them. The other son as well, but not as, his Facebook page is a bit more, I would say, risky, maybe. Like, he might be a PMO, physically in, mentally out. I don't know. We haven't gotten to a meeting yet because of this COVID-19 thing yet. But with that said, I know this individual, child molester, is associated in some way with the Jehovah Witnesses. And he's in this area. Don't know what congregation, but I will soon find out. My wife knows about it too, because I showed her. And I showed her the 6 degrees of relationship between these kids and the guy who got caught, because I got the mugshot and everything in my file that I've made from this guy. I even went to one of his court hearings, but it was all procedural, so no details or anything was divulged from it. So the question I have for these elders in the shepherding call, which I demanded of my wife for me to be there when this happens, because in all of my sort of interaction with the Jehovah Witnesses, I never demanded anything. It was more of a passive-aggressive request here and there. But in this case, I demanded to be there and to sort of flex my head of the household privileges, even though it may not apply to me according to their dogma, being worldly, but that is something that they adhere to, and I would take that trump card and use it in this particular case. But I'm sure it's going to be all nice. I'll charm him up. I could charm the devil out of giving up his power or whatever, and I'm very passive aggressive too, or I could play that particular role really well, and I could tell them everything that they'd like to hear, whisper sweet nothings into the ear. But this is the question I'm going to ask them when all this is said and done at the end of whatever particular session that they're having. And the shepherding calls is really, they just want to know what. They want to check us out. They want to see what our situation is. They want to get into our business, pretty much. That's all about. It's not a spiritual sort of meetup or anything. That's just smoking mirrors there. But what I will ask them, I want to break out the new Elder's Manual in front of me with a section that says you are not to tell, or you could only tell the head of the household of a shepherding call with direction or permission from the branch, the Jehovah Witness branch in New York or wherever. After you get permission from them to let me know if there is a child molestation or child protective sort of situation going on in that particular congregation, or the congregation that they're representing. At first, I'm just going to ask them, okay, is there a problem here? Because in our family situations, we do have another case where there is a child molester there, and that's a story all to itself that I'm not at liberty to tell right now, or possibly ever. But there is some history there, not towards us. We were never victims, or my kids were never victims, or anybody that we know, but there's that sort of degree of familiarity there. And then I have all the paperwork of this particular JW congregate that was convicted of child molestation and gotten 5 years probation for it. So I'm going to ask him before I show him that the paperwork and the proof of that is there a problem with this congregation with child abuse? Because I'm going to bring out the Australian Royal Commission at that point. Also, all the documentaries that we've been seeing of child abuse associated with Jehovah Witnesses, and things like that. And I'm going to ask him point blank: do we have a problem here? Is there something that we need to know? And just wait for their response. I'm assuming, and I could pretty much bet that they're going to tell me, "Oh no, everything's fine. We protect our own here. There's nothing going on here." And then I'm going to let them have it with the proof that I have as far as this one person possibly being a JW member. It could be that he may be worldly. I don't know his situation. Hopefully I would go to a couple of meetings where I could look at the crowd and point him out. I know what he looks like. I got pictures of him. But I will be asking some questions too. And introducing myself to all the elderly JW ladies there. And I think I do know what she looks like too, and get her name. So that's where we're at. So in that situation, we could possibly get marked and ruin it for my wife as far as getting any more friends out of that situation, or could be, handled at that particular shepherding call, and hopefully, they won't say anything, or they will not want to spread this too much, maybe among themselves. As far as a marking talk, I don't know. One thing I will tell you is I will be there to find out if there is or not, because from this point on, I told my wife, because of this child molestation situation, and I don't know none of these people here, I demand to be at all the meetings that my kids go to, or if they have any studies with other people or things like that, because I know that would be the next step my wife would want to take with our kids, is to have somebody come over and study with them their version of the Bible or the religion. I will demand to be there with my, reference Bibles and concurrences and things like that, and having a background of what they teach. So from this point forward, I would physically, mentally, and spiritually, in this case, immerse myself into their culture in the guise of protecting my kids, which is true. It's 100% true. But using the child abuse, allegations and reputation that the Jehovah Witnesses have now to put myself, in that situation, to put myself in the middle of their brainwashing. And I will be there between my kids and the dogma, to sort of, give a different perspective of what they're teaching, and actually use the Bible to kind of refute what they're teaching right then and there. And we'll see how that pans out. It won't be, right in your face type of deal, but passive aggressive questioning that I would have, like, the question about Michael being the archangel, and I could definitely, hold my own with that particular teaching there, and teach him straight from the Bible that, hey, but it says here, to which angel have I given, I forget the actual saying, but you know what I'm getting at. And with all that, ask these questions and everything with my kids around, so they could hear the response or my questioning, to have them think for themselves. It's like, yeah, it's true. This says something else. How did you get to that? So that's where I'm at this point, and definitely will give you updates, and maybe some hidden recordings of of things that's been said around the household there. So we'll see. And that's what's going on now, and like I said, I'll keep you guys posted, and I'm dying for this COVID-19 thing to go away, so I could start my activism right then and there. But we'll see.